Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Chipman. I'm Mayor of the City of Clarence, and it's my pleasure tonight to welcome you to our annual general meeting. Before proceeding, I'd like to ask you to stand for our council prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Clarence. Amen. I'd also like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community as the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on tonight, and acknowledge leaders past and present. Thank you. I do advise all present that tonight is being live streamed on YouTube, and there's a full copy of the agenda available on Council's website. Formally declare the meeting open. I'd like to introduce the Alderman. Apart from myself, beside me is the Deputy Mayor, Alderman Heather Chong, and going from my left, Alderman Sharon Von Berto, Alderman Luke Edmonds, Alderman Dean Newington, Alderman Wendy Kennedy, Alderman Tony Mulder, and to my right, Alderman Beth Warren, Alderman Richard James, Alderman John Peers, and Alderman James Walker. Tonight we have an apology from Alderman Brendan Blomley. For the meeting procedures tonight, the agenda is that I will, following the confirmation of the previous minutes, I'll present an annual report, followed by the Chief Financial Officer. Then the opportunity for Aldermen to report on activities of committees and authorities. And I do advise that we have no matters on notice tonight. So the minutes for the previous annual general meeting held on the 2nd December at Council Chambers have been circulated. Could I have someone move and second that they be adopted, please? Alderman Von Berto, thank you. Alderman Kennedy, thank you. Is there any discussion on the previous minutes? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the annual report. The past year has been like no other in living memory for the City of Clarence. Despite the huge impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the final quarter of the year, much has been achieved by this council, of which we can all be very proud. Council's adaptability was displayed when our meetings were held online for the first time to comply with social distancing requirements. Similarly, a large proportion of our workforce started working from home or in the office on a rotational basis, once again to adhere to strict social distancing requirements. Fortunately, our outdoor workforce was able to keep working without too much disruption, with appropriate restrictions in place. Council's major challenge was to maintain essential services while keeping the wider community informed during the emergency. We were able to deliver timely information, manage facility closures and provide support to the community via our website and social media for the duration, backed up by telephone. Financially, we put in place a range of hardship measures to support our community, and we approved a zero-rate increase budget to reduce the financial impact on key parts of our city. Our constrained budget included a record $22.7 million capital works program to provide immediate economic stimulus, concentrating on shovel-ready projects, renewal programs and upgrading existing facilities. Our Chief Financial Officer will present her financial report shortly. Council's annual program of events got off to a good start before the effects of COVID-19 forced cancellations or postponements from March onwards. Highlights included the 20th Annual Seafarers Festival, the new Dance Hall Days program, and the Clarence Jazz Festival once again had people flocking to stages around the city. Australia Day on the Bellerive Boardwalk is always a highlight, and in 2020 it was celebrated with Paul Cullen as the Australia Day ambassador, and it featured live music as well as a selection of food stalls. The health and well-being of the community remained a priority, and in the past year Council has continued to improve and maintain open areas like the Clarence Foreshore Trail, tracks for mountain bikes and sports grounds. It was great to see our popular pathways busier than they'd ever been. Unfortunately, some parks and reserves in Clarence had to be closed to the public, and I was very impressed with the overall patience and flexibility shown by members of the community as they coped with the various restrictions. In January, Council purchased the East Side Squash Centre in Bellerive to ensure squash continued as one of the many sports available to the residents of Clarence. An area surrounding and including Blunston Arena, where we're meeting tonight, was classified as a smoke-free zone in December, following community consultation that indicated strong support for the change. This declaration of the area as a smoke-free zone will help protect the health of people using the park and other recreation facilities surrounding the arena, from exposure to tobacco smoke and vapour from e-cigarettes, as well as contribute to the denormalising of smoking. The new Bellerive swimming pontoon was installed in March 2020, along with the 4 marker buoys at the 25-metre spacings, parallel with the beach as a reference course for recreational swimmers. The concept of the Clarence City Heart was launched in January, aiming to unleash the full potential of Bellerive, Kangaroo Bay and the Rosny Park areas to become a city centre, enhancing our natural spaces and encouraging more economic activity. The direction of this long-term project will be determined through the results of broad consultation with the community, which started in June and will continue into the next year. Volunteers have always played a vital role in our community, and we are indeed grateful to the vast number of people who gave freely of their time and effort for the betterment of all. With the unexpected and almost immediate effects of COVID-19 on our volunteer workforce, numbers initially dropped quickly as many were high risk and not able to safely operate within the community. While our existing volunteer force dropped quickly, it was heartening to see that many others came forward and to try their hand at volunteering for the first time when the call for assistance went out. Many of those volunteers have continued to serve, and consequently our volunteer program is more active than ever. Unfortunately, we were not able to host our annual morning tea event to thank the volunteers this year, but we are hopeful it will return next year so that we can appropriately recognise their wonderful contributions. I would like to thank my fellow aldermen for their continued dedication and hard work during the year, one which has affected all of us, no matter what our walk in life is. Their help and advice has been outstanding. I also thank the General Manager and his team who have risen to many challenges during his first year in the role. In particular, the staff at Council are to be commended for their dedication and resilience during the lockdown period, especially to those who kept working to deliver essential services while continually managing the risks. The level and commitment and professionalism from our staff has been superb, and one that our community can be very appreciative and proud of. Thank you, and I look forward to a brightening year ahead as we emerge from this pandemic, and I'd now like to call on the Chief Financial Officer, Ms Coleman, to present her report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for the opportunity to present Council's 2019-2020 financial statements this evening. I'll start off with the statutory compliance. Despite the events that the Mayor has just spoken about, our staff were able to lodge the accounts within the statutory timeframe. And also the audit was undertaken by the TAS Audit Office, and they too were impacted by COVID-19, and unfortunately this did impact on the finalisation of the financial statements at a later date than we would normally experience. Having said that, the Auditor-General has completed the audit and issued an unqualified audit report. I'd like to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our financial results. 2019-2020 financial year commenced seamlessly from the previous. Financial projections were aligned to council estimates and long-term financial plans. The events that unfolded, commencing outside our borders in December, spread like wildfire around the globe and found itself in our community. COVID-19 had arrived, and all tiers of government responded to protect our health, our safety and our well-being. We started to hear words such as adapt, agile, quick response, pivot. With regard to the financial statements, they too were impacted. A notable impact was the TAS Water Board decision to freeze the second instalment of the annual dividend, resulting in a $1.1 million reduction in expected dividend revenue for the year. Council's response to COVID-19 included a financial assistance package that was activated early in April, and it included things such as waiving interest on outstanding rates from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, and this had an impact of $130,000. The introduction of the COVID-19 financial hardship policy found us with 44 applications being received and approved by the 30th of June. The impact of this is that we had a higher than normal outstanding rates balance as at the 30th of June. Council also approved a community recovery package of totalling approximately $215,000, and the rollout of that package is ongoing, and as is the financial hardship policy, which is still available for community access. Some key messages. We had a positive financial result despite COVID-19. The underlying result is a $5.2 million surplus, and this excludes capital grants and contributed assets. We had an uptick in fees and charges income of over 10%. And also, as I've already mentioned, we had a less than expected dividend income. The delivery of an underlying surplus is consistent with a long-term financial planning that supports the delivery of council's strategic goals, including planning for flexibility to meet unforeseen future externalities. And I think when we were looking at that, we didn't have a pandemic in mind. However, here we are. And of course, opportunities as well. I'd like to also mention TAS Water in terms of our highlights. TAS Water revalued its water and sewer assets, which resulted in a write-down of council's share in TAS Water by $45 million, being an amount of the council's share is $149 million of $1.44 billion, which is the total of TAS Water's assets. This and the reduction in the dividend were key matters raised at the TAS Water's owners' meeting and at the TAS Water annual general meeting as being of great concern to the owner councils. In response, an expert advisory group has been formed. The group's purpose is to support and provide advice to the Chief Owner's representative in their discussion with the TAS Water Board on key strategic issues. Another matter I'd like to talk about is cash. As they say, cash is king or queen. Our cash and investments are on the balance sheet at $65 million. $40 million of that is actually restricted, specifically for grants, provisions, and of course our asset renewal reserve. $25 million is unrestricted, and of course that supports working capital. This cash balance is a direct result of a long-term financial management strategy that was implemented 25 years ago. The nexus of the financial strategy is to ensure that council is in a sound financial position to fund all activities and can secure current and future asset service levels that aligns with communities' expectations of a modern, progressive city. Long-term asset management plans and the financial resources required to support ongoing maintenance of our asset is represented in the renewal reserve, which sits at $31 million at the end of June. These funds are specifically allocated to maintaining council assets now and into the future. And by way of note, in the past 5 years, Council has received contributed assets, being subdivisions, of $41 million. The ongoing growth in the city will place renewal burden on our infrastructure that must be funded in a responsible and sustainable manner. Just some watching brief items that I'd like to mention. With regards to Council's asset sustainability ratio, which is also reported in the financial statements. This is below target, and it's something that we'll need to focus on as it represents, goes to the condition and service level expectations of our infrastructure. The other item also is what I've mentioned earlier, is the Taswater dividend risk and the potential impact on our long-term financial plans. With regards, I'd just like to finish with the Tas Audit Office provides us with an audit completion report, and a couple of items that they've asked us to be aware of is they raise the awareness for the appropriate management of excessive leave balances, and also ensuring that we continue our work and improvement in our system reporting and preventative controls. That ends my report for the evening.
Thank you, Ms Coleman. If you could stay there, and we may have some questions. Are there any questions of myself or Chief Financial Officer? Alderman Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to the Chief Financial Officer. The actual monies that is actually sitting in cash, you advised, was $25 million. And also, I would like clarification about the $7 million that's actually sitting in one of our accounts in relation to the 7 Mile Beach Sporting Precinct, and also a $14.5 million amount that the state government provided to the council on loan as part of the COVID-19. In my direct question to you, CFO, are any of those monies that are either in cash or in that loan account from the state government or in the 7 Mile Beach Sporting Precinct, if council decides to initiate a buyback land from Shambroad Petrochemicals, is any of those funds that are just outlined be able to be provided if a decision is made to buy back the land from Shambroad Petrochemicals?
Thank you for your questions. First of all, with regards to the loan amounts that you're asking, they actually relate to the 2021 financial year and were part of Council's estimates. So in terms of the financial statements here, I can't actually answer that question for you this evening. The 7 Mile Beach Sporting Precinct, I understand, was a council-approved decision in terms of taking on loan money to support the development of that development, and I don't believe that that has progressed, and we haven't taken the debt up for that amount. And I'm not quite sure. What was the other question? Sorry, there was three.
25 million cash that was the...
So that's so the $25 million cash that I mentioned is unrestricted, which means that it's actually supporting working capital, so it's going to be supporting the ongoing operations of council.
Thank you. And my second question is that at the time that the budget was finalised in July this year, there was an austere budget constraint put upon council for the 2021 financial year. Given that there has been an expected greater inflow of revenue post the budget, and there is a value associated with that of $500,000, what funding would that be made available to, or can that funding be support in any benefit that would flow to the ratepayers of the City of Clarence?
Again, with reference to your question being one of budget estimates for the 2021 financial year, given the focus for this evening is the 1920 financial year, I'm not actually in a position to answer that question. However, I'm prepared to take that on notice and prepare a response accordingly.
Any other questions? In that case, I'd like to invite a motion to adopt the annual report.
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Walker. Seconder. Thank you, Alderman Pears. Is there any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any reports on activities and achievements of council committees and authorities?
Can I just make a quick comment in relation to the events committee?
Certainly.
We recently had a events committee meeting, and at that meeting it was discussed a number of issues, in particular to the Jazz Festival. Now, it's basically determined on what areas that council decides on what to utilise as part of the Jazz Festival timetable. It's just interesting to note that we may be moving away from council areas or its reserves where it's normally being done, and there has been a suggestion that we have one of the jazz festivals at the winery out at Richmond, and also another at the East Risdon or at the Bowen Aboriginal Centre. That is a deviation from the norm, but it's first effort, in my understanding, excuse me, to move away from what has been conducted on council land. So I just thought I'd mention that because it's a deviation from the norm, and it may be something that may be continued in the future.
Are there any other reports? In that case, I note that at items 8, 9 and 10 there are no matters on notice, so I formally close the annual general meeting. Thank you very much for joining us.
We're not live now? Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much everyone.